Hi, Peter Allen's Figure Transformations. What I want to discuss today is our upper body posture, how it's affecting us, and what we can start to do to fix it. Now, it's very complex, a lot more complex than I would have even thought, because we have so many muscles coming into the humerus. Unlike kind of the glute, a lot of the muscles do the same kind of thing. It's mainly our glutes and our adductors. Not going to get into the hip too much. But in our upper body, we got our pec that's kind of pulling or adducting our arm. We got our rotator cuffs that are rotating it out. We also have our lats, our rhomboids, upper traps. So we got all these muscles that allow a much bigger range of motion in our upper body than we do in our kind of our lower. So once we start to understand this, and the big thing we got to start to do is kind of really stretch out that upper body. So I've been just kind of working on trying to hollow out, kind of stretch where I kind of pull across. The more I kind of get into this, the more fascia I start to get moving throughout my extremities. Because again, my rear deltoid also attaches to the scapula on the back. The other big thing to kind of understand about this is again, our hips affect how our upper body's going to move. If I start getting too tight through here, now I got to start to make up for it through my upper back and my neck area. And that's really what's happening to a lot of people, but we can kind of treat these as two different issues. But if you really want to fix your upper body movement patterns, you kind of want to follow what I've been talking about in terms of focusing on your hips first. That's going to start to elicit a huge movement pattern. And then if you're also working on the upper, so again, I've realized for years I was kind of pulling back and sticking out too much. I had to actually come in the other way, hollow out, and then I want to try and work pulling back, okay, as much as I can. But the big thing again is just moving, okay? A lot of times, even myself included, I was trying to keep my traps in place. And I realized I kind of got stuck like that. And then it starts to lead to kind of neck issues up and through here. So whether it's kind of maybe doing like upright rows, different exercises, or again, different stretches, kind of working yourself into these big patterns, the more you can do, the better. Now the other thing with the percussion gun to help kind of increase the speed in which this is done, I got to kind of work my whole way around this shoulder complex for the most part, because if you think about it, all these muscles are doing different things, attaching. This is why it's much harder to fix the upper body than it is kind of in some ways the lower, even though the lower muscles are kind of stronger, if you will. I started realizing I was kind of running into some issues in terms of kind of loosening this tissue. So I want to kind of get in here where I'm going to hit my front delt, my pec, because I got to lengthen this area. And then I want to get into my lat, my rear delt, my triceps is another huge one that I never really accounted for. You also have your serratus coming in underneath here. Mine became extremely overactive on my left as well. And then the other one too is the core, because if we're having bad posture, now my core is tight. It's really hard to kind of get that torso to kind of stretch and get us back into that upright position. But if you think of the core, you got to think of the hips. And that's what I've started to understand all too well is if we're going to address a lot of these things, we got to address the body as a whole. All too often we're waiting till a pain happens and then we're addressing the pain. We're not really realizing, okay, I got elbow pain. Well, it's my shoulder that caused my elbow to move a certain way and become overused. And one of the other big things I kind of noticed with the upper body is the clavicle. If you kind of pull it up, it starts to kind of curve more. If it's down and depressed, it's much straighter. And I was kind of perplexed with this for a little while and trying to figure out how is people's kind of collarbones or clavicle kind of getting so twisted. Now I realize it's because their shoulders are up too high, or their traps are basically their trap for the most part is overactive, which I knew, I just didn't realize that it would cause an extra curvature or excessive curvature through the collarbone. And again, if you think this is up, now I can't move my arm the way I should, okay? And again, my lats might be tight, my pec might be tight, so there's so many things in here that we gotta really start to loosen. And if you follow some of my other videos, I'm gonna make another one right now about loosening up this kind of shoulder complex, because I can go into it a little bit right now. So what I'm gonna do is Again, kind of get into this inside here. A lot of you might think that that's, bone in there, but you're going to realize that it's just scar tissue that's developed over the years. When I do this, I want to kind of come up and I want to hollow it out. And we get up by the collarbone region. Make my way over to the sternum. A lot of times when you do this too, you want to hold in the area. I notice all too often when people, and myself included before I started understanding the best ways to do this, is kind of moving too fast. You want to stay on the area, you want to kind of let it vibrate and kind of sink in and start to release, especially when you're getting to these areas where the tissue is really kind of dense and hard. Because again, we got the pec coming in here, we got the front deltoid. You got a lot of muscles doing a lot of different things. You also have the bicep. So, if I'm going to stretch my bicep, I need to get this out really far out here. I for years was struggling to figure out how do we lengthen that bicep. I was always trying to do this, but again, realized if this is too tight, I'm not going to get the stretch that I wanted. Another way to kind of loosen up the pec and the front deltoid as well is to get into this kind of elongated position. I usually do it with the TRX. Bring that on back. But with the upper body, and if we're trying to fix the arm movement pattern or kind of elbow pain, shoulder pain, we want to start to understand that we got to work all the way around this, okay? Because kind of just freeing up one muscle isn't going to be enough, because for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we all should have, in some way, some relatively defined muscles. But if the muscles become really tight, it's going to seem like almost nothing's there. And that's why I feel like people are thinking, I need to strengthen, and I need more muscle on my body. They're not realizing that they got to stretch and get the fascia moving again. Because a lot of times when we exercise, the fascia is moving, but it's only going to move as far as we are restricted in terms of our movement. And we're going to slap on new muscle tissue on top of that. But what we want to get is that kind of deep layer, if you will, moving again, especially if, maybe we've been inactive for a long time. Again, I'm just kind of working that lat region. Again, I'm going to elevate. Again, if I want to stretch, if I want to open up this lat, I got to stretch it. The big thing with all this is just getting it into stretched positions. And then working the fascia. All too often, when we're doing things, we're working it in the neutral position. And that's the best we can hope for, is getting it back to neutral, right? So if I'm kind of working my pec and I'm just sitting here like this, it's going to loosen the tissue, but it's not going to really promote bigger movement, because I'm not stretching it, I'm not opening it, I'm not getting it in different positions to loosen the tissue. Same thing with the hip, if we're getting massage, a lot of times we're just in that neutral position. And it will help, but if I want to elicit big response, and I think this is why people think that we can't really truly move fascia, because nobody's been really moving fascia when we're in the stretched positions. If we want to elicit a big response, we want to stretch it out, and then we want to work the tissue, as opposed to going from a neutral position and trying to work it there. And along with percussion guns, we can kind of speed that process up. You can watch some of the other videos where I specifically kind of work targeted areas in terms of if you want something to follow along, or if people want those videos, kind of reach out to me and I'll make some. All right, thank you.